Life expert, mentor, and from zero to multi-millions. Today is going to be an awesome show. I am Shylo from in Duluth, Minnesota, where the weather is crazy. All right, today is going to be incredible. Like I said, the weather outside is raining, it's hot, it's cold. I get to look at the gorgeous view. I just moved into my new condo. I am so happy. It's such an amazing time. Anytime you have to move though, it is stressful, it is crazy. And I'm just ready to be here with all of you. So I have someone I've been following for a very long time, actually could call a business partner if you want, back in the day. But I have been following Ryan Blair for many years now and have watched this incredible journey and got to be a part of a business with him. And then all of a sudden watched this incredible transformation over the last few years as well. Like, again, we just keep getting better and better. You know, that's the name of the game, right? And so Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today. For all our listeners and viewers, just say hi, shout out where you're at. I think you're in LA, if I'm not mistaken. So tell us a little bit about what's happening in your world right now.
Yeah, well, nice to meet you. I am in the Hollywood Hills, Los Angeles, and unlike you, it's a perfect, beautiful, warm day outside. So, I'm calling in from Los Angeles, and it's an honor and a privilege. And as you just mentioned earlier, that you witnessed my transformation. It's a privilege to be able to share with you some of the things that I've learned as a result of what I've been able to experience in my life's journey. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were talking before we started this and you said you're an open book, which I absolutely love, because there's nothing, you can't be anything else, right? We have to share our pain. We have to share our journeys. And that's why we have this show as well. So the last few years you have done like this complete turnaround, and I cannot help like every single thing you're doing. And I'm like, what's happening here? And at first I didn't know, you started something called Altar Call. We're going to go into that in a little bit. We definitely will. But before all that, let's strip it down. Because your story is one of my favorites that I got to hear in the business world. Okay, your company, you started a small company. I'll say that humbly because it was not small. You did incredible things there, and we'll go into that. But you had an incredible story as a young man, and it was really the driving force of that momentum and why people wanted to be a part of Ryan, like why people wanted to join something you were doing. So for people who may not know you, the millennials and people who are a little bit younger than us, let's talk about it. What got your life kind of in this amazing, because you've written 2 books. I mean, we could read the bio all day. I mean, 2 books, New York Times bestseller. You've sold companies. You've had multiple businesses.
My very early memories are of my father and my mother, and we lived in a relatively middle-class environment at a very young age. My dad was an engineer, and he was a Vietnam vet, and he never really healed the trauma that he had gone through as a result of his childhood experience and his young adult experience. But he was a very motivated, ambitious person, and he started doing well. As a young kid, I had everything taken care of. I had new toys under the Christmas tree every year. I had new clothing, school year. And then my dad, as a result of his unhealed trauma, got addicted to drugs, and my mom got addicted to alcohol, and my family disintegrated. I'm the youngest of 7. And next thing you know, I went from, having a beautiful middle-class environment to, by about the age of 13, all of that was taken away from me. I remember seeing my mom's car repossessed, the house foreclosed upon, went from having everything I wanted to having to buy my clothes at secondhand thrift stores, and went to a place where I was in abject poverty. And so in poverty, I really rebelled a lot. I was upset. I was upset at the society that didn't protect me. I was upset at the abuse that I had to go through. My father was also physically abusive as well as mentally abusive. And he abused my sisters and my brothers and my mother. So I was really upset at my church, at society. And so I rebelled, and I joined a gang, and I was involved in a gang in the greater Los Angeles area. And for a period of time, I, was in and out of juvenile hall, in and out of trouble. And, I got to see the dark side of the world at that time, basically. And so, when I say dark side, I mean, I saw pure evil. People were murdered. All kinds of terrible things happened during that time. I was in a gang, went to juvenile hall and lived in poverty. And then by the grace of God, a mentor came into my life by way of my mother. My mother had found me a mentor, and he ended up dating her and then ended up becoming my stepfather. And that was really a life-changing moment for me.
You know, I like your story. And I always say, you know, we're children of trauma. You know,
Yeah.
I grew up in a very, not the exact same situation, but definitely alcohol was prevalent, drugs. You know, I raised my brother from the age of 8. He was a baby. I mean, all of a sudden I became this mother who was a child. And, you know, my mom and dad were wonderful people, but addiction took over, and that was our life, you know? So I always look at someone, you know, like you, and I love listening to that story because I'm like, there it is. You know, we got that inner hustler really early, you know, and some people choose the path of, you know what, I'm going to turn this around, and maybe someone comes into their life like a mentor, or, you know, maybe they hit a rock bottom and they're like, I got to change it, or I'm not going to make it. Or some people choose the other way and they become that life. Yeah. And that's hard. And it's really hard to watch. And so, you know, I was on paper, you know, I shouldn't be where I am. And on paper, you probably shouldn't be where you are. But I loved your story. I remember when I first listened to you years back, you were, I was in a company with you. It was my first experience in the MLM world. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what I was doing. But I just remember being so inspired by somebody who I could identify with. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm like, I get that. I get what you're saying. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, who share stages, we've all been there. You know, there's a reason you're in that kind of business. An entrepreneur has to build it. You have to self-motivate. So you get a mentor and things start shifting. And then at 19, if I'm correct, you started your own business.
Yeah, I think I started it right around 19, 20 years old. I got a job as an engineer at 19, and I started as a call center representative and then worked my way into an engineering department very quickly. And pretty soon I was leading the engineers because I was a leader in the gang. So I had no problem leading grown men, right? It was like not an issue for me. And so I worked up pretty quickly because I put all of my energy into becoming successful. I'm a very spiritual person. And so I had these visions early on that I was going to become a successful entrepreneur. I'll never forget, chills would rush over my body. And I just knew that I was going to do something, you know, impactful. And so I got a job as an engineer, and I was blessed to work at a company where I was able to witness them scale and build their business. And I got very close to the founder of the company, and I was able to be mentored by him. And I was his right hand in a number of different, very important projects in the business. And that gave me the viewpoint that I needed, and also gave me I saw the way he ran his business, and I thought I could do better. Like any young kid, right? We see our mentors and like, I could do better than them. And, you know, and I reflect on all that I learned from that mentor still to this day. But yeah, so from that, I then decided I was going to branch off and start my own company. And that was right at about 20 years old. And I started a company called 24/7 Tech, which is a real simple technology company that we would repair networks and computers. And our byline was, if your network's a wreck, call 24/7 Tech. And I would basically stay up all night long, repairing people's computers and taking their calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That was the whole business model. And I realized that wasn't very scalable. And as a result of some of the work that I'd done at 24/7 Tech, I'd gotten exposed to an opportunity to be a pioneer in the wireless broadband industry. And so I started a wireless broadband company called SkyPipeline. And that ended up scaling very quickly. And by the time I was 24 years old, I sold that company in a $25 million transaction. And then from there, I went and started a social network. This is in 2004. And this was right when MySpace started becoming popular. And I created one around goal setting called Path Connect. And then that ended up becoming a part of ViSalus. And a key element as to why ViSalus became so successful was because we were one of the first to really integrate social networking into our offering. So we started offering our challenge via social networking. And so, I've always had a lot of different business innovations involved. And back to what you said earlier, I was really driven by, I didn't realize this at the time, but I was driven by the fact that I had these tremendous holes inside of me. And I thought that every time I accomplished something that it would fill the hole. So my dad made 100,000 a year as an engineer. And so my first goal was I needed to make more than 100,000 a year. because I thought that would somehow make me feel worthy. So I got to that point very quickly, quicker than I could ever have dreamed of. I was making $100,000 a year at 20 years old. And my dad had worked his whole life to get to that point, before he had fallen into drugs. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting on top of, I've surpassed my father, but I needed more. And then I was like, okay, well, 100,000 didn't fill the hole. So how about 1 million? And so I went for 1 million and got that. And then that didn't fill the hole. So I went for cars, and then that didn't fill the hole. And I went for jets, and that didn't fill the hole. And I went for mansions, and that didn't fill the hole. And I went for all kinds of other things trying to fill those holes. And so, that's a huge element of my story. I was very successful because like a lot of people will allow their trauma to hold them down. For me, I used it as a fuel. But then I realized later on in the transformation that you were describing, that you witnessed, that that's not an eternal fuel source. That's a fuel source that, that runs dry at some point, or it will, run you into misery, basically.
Right. So we got to go back a little bit, because what does, you said it a little bit, but we're just going to talk about it. If I had multi-millions at a young age, at that age, I don't know how I would have handled it. And so I know you filled the void. And in your first book, I did read your first book. Yeah. You did talk a lot about some of that. And it was at the time when I read that, I was like, good, someone's actually saying it. Like, let's be real. You get massive success. I always talk about Hollywood, so we can take it off you for a minute. But I'm like, if I would have been a celebrity at the ages of like 13 to 17, 18, oh my gosh, I would have been all over page 6, just a train wreck. Like, let's be real. I mean, I would, who knows how to handle that kind of money and success. And so there was probably some stumbling along the way, because there is. I talk to a lot of really successful men and women, and I love when they share their funny stories of what they used to do. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a whole other book, But when you talk about that, let's be real, somebody coming in, you were a young, highly successful, driven, thirsty, you just kept going, you had that drive, and you're making all this money. What things are you grateful that you kind of did? And what things were you like, ooh, that was a good lesson? I always say lessons, because we learn.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I've in evaluating myself, and it's like, I realized that I didn't have the same relationship with money that other people do, and that I've never really valued it. I've never seen it as this thing. Like I know it's very important. And there's been times where I've been light on money, and I've had to earn it, and I've had to force myself to take action to bring it into my life to be able to pay my bills and whatnot. So I'm not saying I was just born, like some people are born into it and they never value it. Like, I was poor, I was in the middle class. Like, I understand money and the importance of it. But like, for me, you could call me insane, because like, I just was like, if I could make $100,000 a year by the time I'm 20, and I did that in 1 year's time worth of hard, 1, maybe 2 years of hard work to get to that point. Well, what would happen if I put in 4 years worth of hard work, or 8 years worth of hard work, or 16 years? And now I'm 23 years into it. And so my values around money are just different. Now I see it and I use it differently. Now, at that time, I could make it so fast. And I've always had a gift of being able to generate revenue into my life, that I didn't care about how I spent it, because I could just make it so fast. And so I have a long list of $1 million mistakes. I have some $10 million mistakes. I have some $100 million mistakes. And, I could even say that some mistakes that I've made have cost several $100 million. And, and all of that, though, I look back at it and I smile, because I just wasn't ready to receive that level of money, and wasn't my vessel wasn't ready to hold on to that level of money. And so when I look back at like some of the investments I didn't make that I should have, that my friends made that, yielded hundreds of millions, and I said no, or I look at some of the investments I did make that, were basically big losses, I realized that, I just didn't have a strong foundation. So money has taught me a lot. And I had to, as a result of my experience as an entrepreneur, I've had over $2 billion flow through my hands in terms of the businesses that I've ran. And so if you think about that, that means that the wisdom that I have today cost $2 billion because I had to deploy $2 billion to paying people commissions and buying products and hiring doctors and many lawyers, way too many lawyers, kinds of stuff. So when you think about how my perspective, it's, I've had $2 billion flow through me to create the level of awareness that I have toward money today and the things that I can share with people about that. But there's some crazy things that I could share with you. Like, I went crazy buying material stuff. I bought many cars, many houses. I had a wardrobe so filled with stuff that I would never wear, like $50,000 coats and things that's just ridiculous that, I still have some artifacts of those moments in my life, but I no longer value the material side of things because, I have a 12-year-old boy and I want to have him value things a little differently than, when you have a rich dad that throws money around, sometimes that creates a curse inside your children. Absolutely. So I pulled back a lot of that energy.
Well, when I see you now, I see you in the t-shirts and everything. And that's good. If you want to be wealthy, you have, I can't remember the saying because I just saw it the other day and I was like, that's so true. People who are wealthy dress like they're not. And if people who dress like they're wealthy are poor, like it's interesting. Like you're chasing it, like I got to show this, like I got to show that I'm this, but you're really not. It's like, no, you don't have to spend money to do that. You know what I mean? It's
Well, there's an issue called decision fatigue. When you're running a large business or you have lots of responsibilities, you want to reduce the amount of decisions that you have to make. And especially if you're not doing this, like you said, to impress other people. Because if your goal is to impress other people, then yes, you're going to be, dressing up to do that or buying, 50 watches or cars or whatever. My objective isn't to impress other people anymore. I lived a life for many years where I really cared deeply about the opinions of others. And, I realized that was a flawed strategy for living. And so, so I would say that if I had, a stylist to dress me every day, I probably would not wear the same shirt every day, but since it's me styling myself, I wear the same shirt every day.
It's easy. It's easy. And if you see me, this is like really good for today. Like if you see me normally, it's yoga pants. It's like, there is nothing crazy. It's the same yoga pants. Like it's like black with the same stuff. I keep it very simple.
The value system of the people. And that's one of the key things I'd love to share with your audience is we have to just evaluate the people that we're looking at. When you watch people on social media or you see their posts, like evaluate and ask yourself, what goes behind? How many decisions have to be made in order for that picture? And when somebody's bragging about their glam squads, like, what are they, why is that such an important thing to them? And for me, I came to the realization that the amount of money that I had spent, I could have saved many lives with. And so I made a decision, and it was really a deal I made with God that I was going to, I was going to become a better steward of money, and that I was going to invest in things that made an impact. And the thing that I measure the most is how many lives could I potentially save through the financial investments that I make or through the charitable contributions that I make. And, when you're like, all right, $100,000 can save 100 people, right? Literally save their lives, give them the medicine and the food that they need to live. And if you don't provide that sustenance to them, likely die. And so then you look at, okay, I could spend $100,000 on another car or a private jet ride to Europe. It's like, I'm going to save 100 people and I can fly first class just fine to Europe if I want to, versus, fly private to Europe.
Mm-hmm. I think it's incredible when you have, it's perspective. It's all about perspective. But, the thing is that, being in business now, I've been an entrepreneur for 14 years. And it's very interesting that I used to use shame to drive me. I used to use all the things that I had to heal eventually. It was like the things that I had to eventually get to heal got me in the door. That driver, that, the shame, the trauma, the sadness, the fear, it'll drive you so far. But there comes a point in your life where you're like, I've got to heal this. And I've got to do this now if I want to get to where I really need to be. And that's that next level. And that's what I'm seeing in you. And I think that's so incredible because I did watch you. You were the rock star. You know, you went from this rock and roll, this young guy owns companies, he sold. And then it was like, whoa, what just happened to Ryan? It's so good. And I had a transformation like that, not as big, but you know, I quit drinking last year and I had to. Because I had alcoholic parents. I was going down the wrong road. I was stressed. I went through a lawsuit. It was horrible. You know, and I wasn't dealing with anything. I was sweeping everything under the rug, and all the things that got me to where I needed to be were starting to eat at me. Yeah. Like now I have to fix this, because if I don't fix this, I have nothing. Yeah. I won't have anything. Yeah. So, you know, when I dropped that and started healing and started to elevate, and I am closest to God I've ever been, even though I've always been close. It's just that next level to have that higher power and have him right there. Mm-hmm. It's like everything shifted. My business went to where I always wanted it to go. My opportunities soared. I'm happier. I'm healthier. I'm happy. Like I never used to say, I couldn't say that before. I'd be like, well, no, it was always, but I have to do this and then, you know, I think we get a bug in us when we're business people. We're like, well, it's the next thing. You know, what's the next thing? I wasn't even enjoying any success. Yeah. And I know that you've experienced that too. It's like, oh, another car. Great. What's the next one? Oh, a house. Cool. I already bought that, this house over here and I have this. It like becomes it's not even fun. Yeah. Like it's a thing.
Well, you get to the point where you just realize that there's a few of us that have got to the point that you just described where you realize that there's more pain every time you try to fill the hole and it doesn't get filled. See, most people never try to fill the hole. They just wallow in it. They dwell. They never actually try to fill that hole. And then those of us try to fill the hole with success. And the few people that actually do that and get to a place of success, and then they realize, and this is the sad realization, is like, it's a painful thing to realize that the hole is just getting worse. And this object just makes it worse. The next object just makes it worse. It becomes a very painful cycle. And there's, you know, few of us that have tried to use success to fill the void in our lives and found that it didn't fill it. And when you get to that point, it's misery, because then you're like, what? Society told me that success was going to make me happy. You know, the music videos that I watched growing up, the lifestyles of the rich and famous, the cribs, the covers of magazines, the keeping up with Kardashians, all of this stuff leads us to believe that once we have success, once we have money, for me, like it was private jet, once I had that, I would be happy. And I remember I was just in misery, even though I was, you know, traveling in luxury or living a decadent lifestyle. I was in absolute misery. And so, but what you've just described, though, by quitting drinking and everything else, is God has always been close to you. You've always had this path and this transformational journey, and you had to make some choices and some decisions in order for you to get to your next level. And so by removing alcohol and some of the other changes that you've made, you just brought more light into your life. I too have quit drinking, and I've quit a lot of things. I don't even drink caffeine anymore. And I used to sell caffeine. So I used to sell a lot of it. But yeah, I quit anything and everything that I felt was going to, that was going to either prohibit my transformational journey or slow it down. And I started doing things that accelerate the transformational journey, like meditation, breath work. I pray with a group of people every single day, over 300 people. I do a lot of activities every day just to try to accelerate the transformational journey as well.
Mm-hmm. I think that's incredible. I think it's incredible too. And when people can strip that away and find that inner peace, and you can describe it to people until they go through it, like, when you have that peace to know everything's going to be okay and you're supported, and sometimes I think everybody uses the material things support us. Oh, I've got this and this and this and this, I'll be okay. But it really is coming within. And that's what's incredible about it. And so let's talk about it. You sold ViSalus and you had written a book, and what got you to where you are now? What was the shifts that got you here, Altar Call?
Well, so if you recall, in Nothing to Lose, I've written 2 books, Nothing to Lose and Rock Bottom to Rockstar. Nothing to Lose, my mother had just fallen down a flight of stairs and she was in a coma. And then there's a documentary about the journey called Nothing to Lose, a documentary on YouTube. It's free. And my mother woke up from the coma. It was a very spiritual situation. I was right about to take her off life support. And I went to her and told her, it's time to go, and I'm going to have to pull the plug. And I made plans to take her to her home to pass away in hospice. And I prayed that if there's something inside of you that wants to live, you got to let me know. And by the grace of God, she woke up, and she woke up like within a day of that prayer. And then slowly but surely, I was able to have some time with my mother. And at that time, ViSalus was really taking off and doing quite well. And my son was suffering with autism. And so I had this really tremendous strain in my private life. Every day I worried about was today my mother's last day. And every day, and I wanted it to be her last day in many cases because of the amount of suffering she was going through. Like, I'd pray for God just to please, grant her mercy so she doesn't have to be in so much pain, because although she woke up from the coma, she was living a pretty painful life. So every single day I had this very traumatic thing happening in my life. My son also having autism was extremely traumatic on me. And he was, in a very difficult period of time. And over time, I was my mother was in a coma for 2 years, and about 4 years worth of just every single day having to compartmentalize and having to worry about the health of my family and then the health of my business. In 2016, I decided that I no longer could be the CEO of ViSalus. I had to step down to spend the time with my mother before she transitioned, and to try to figure out how to get my son's autism and my son right. And at that time, I was also going through a pretty toxic relationship with his mother as well. And so it was a pretty ugly situation. So in 2016, I stepped down from being the CEO of ViSalus, late 2016. My mother went on hospice right around that exact time. And so I then made a decision that I was going to stop doing drugs and stop living a decadent lifestyle, because I wanted to make sure that I was close to my mom during her final days. Because I knew that, my old lifestyle would have jumped off and gone to a festival or a party or on a bender. And I didn't want to find out that I missed an opportunity to say goodbye to my mom because of that behavior. So that was a big transition for me. And that year that she was on hospice, now I didn't know that she was going to stick around for a year. I thought once she went on hospice, we had weeks. So once again, it was a whole nother series of very traumatic events and the way that impacted me. But for a period of a year, I just went deep into meditation, deep into prayer. And I thought I was preparing for her transition. And I worked with spiritual practitioners and really went deep into wanting to be there with her. And when on October 19th, I had a premonition. And I had a premonition it was time to go say goodbye to my mom. And a voice came and spoke to me and said, "You need to go say goodbye to your mom." And I literally was like, "What?" And I remember thinking to myself, okay. And I got in the car that night, and it was late at night. And I went and told, because I wasn't sure if that meant that she was gone the next day. Went and told her what had come to me. She'd said, "I'm not prepared to go." It was really traumatic. And I said, "Well, I heard a voice saying it was your time, Mom." And, when I talked to her, I said, "If you're staying here for me, know that I'm going to be okay." I explained to her the challenges I had with self-medication and what was going on in my life, and told her that if she goes in grace, that I'll be able to become the leader I'm destined to be. But for as long as she's holding on in a state of suffering, I'm suffering with her. And as a result of those conversations over a couple of nights, her soul basically elevated. And on November the 2nd, she elevated, which was unexpected, because I wasn't sure if I was crazy that I heard this voice, because there was no signs, no indicators. All my family thought she was just fine, and I was just being over dramatic and emotional and so forth. And November 2nd, she elevated. And then I knew unequivocally that there was a higher power, that I was being guided, that I received a message, and it was clear as day. And that message came to fruition a few days later. I knew that there were forces at work that we couldn't see. And that's when, I guess I would tell you, I went nuclear. I decided to tear up and burn up the old Ryan Blair. Everything about him had to go. I was not happy. I would have traded every one of my friends for another moment with my mother or the health of my son. I was not happy with who I was. I was not happy with who was there for me during this time. And so I decided that I was going to basically just tear everything down and build it back up from scratch. And that process started on November the 2nd. And it was a very ugly awakening process. It was very messy, I should say. I had to look at a lot of terrible things that I had done and that behaviors that I had created and ways that I was not honoring myself, my body, my mom, my family, my heritage and my ancestry. Like, I had to do a lot of deep work. And I did about, I'd say, 2 years worth of, like, my full-time job was to figure out how to become the best version of me possible and to remove the negative programming, remove the traumatic events. And my father passed away during that process too. And so my mother's transition taught me love, and my father's transition taught me forgiveness. And through both love and forgiveness, I was able to reconcile within me and integrate a lot of things that were wounded. So when I say healing, I mean 12 hours a day worth of breath work, prayer, meditation, and crying. And I do vows of silences. I would do fasting. I would abstain from anything and everything. And over a period of 2 years, I got to the place where I was able to say to myself that I'm ready to start helping others. And that was when Altar Call was born. And that's when I started just mentoring others and helping others. And, and I didn't know how it was going to work. I didn't know if I was supposed to, I'm supposed to be a healer. Like, I was the least healed person in the world. And God, you want me to be a healer? Like, I didn't even believe in healers, 2 minutes ago. And all of a sudden, a couple of years of the hard work, I'm now going to be a healer, I guess. And I started healing people, and, I took on a couple of projects. Some young men came to my attention that I started helping through drugs. I helped them get off drugs. And then I started helping more people. And now, I've helped tens of thousands of people in the process of creating Altar Call. And I help hundreds of people every single day.
And I think that's incredible. I always say, make your pain your purpose.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I like to joke around, but I'm like, the day you find out you're not perfect is a great and horrible day.
Yeah.
when you have to be 100% accountable, it's painful. Okay. Yeah. And when you look back, and for me, it was relationships. I'd always be like, why don't I have, I have a couple friends, but why don't I have the true friends? Like, I always had these girlfriends who could have 10 friends at the same time. I'm like, that's not me. I don't know why. And I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, because I couldn't give all of myself to everyone. I always had these walls built up. And then I looked back at, relationships, my first husband, and it was messy. I like the word messy. You used it. I'm going to use it too. It was just messy. I'm like, yeah. But I was part of that too. For a long time, I played a victim in that relationship. And not that there wasn't things that happened that were to me, but I wasn't a victim. I mean, I was just as much responsible. Relationships are two people. But yeah. I had a really hard time for many years seeing my part fully. I would always admit just enough. Like, I did that, but you did that. You know what I mean? So, getting to that place, it is incredible that you did it, because it hurts. It sucks to feel. Okay. So like when people, I always tell people, being sober isn't the hard part. Not drinking isn't hard. It's feeling all the pain. Because I didn't want to feel the pain. I didn't want to feel rejection and fear and heartache and loss and all the stuff I had shoved under the rug. So when you come out, you feel great for a little bit, but when you actually dive in and heal, like what you just described, like you go for it. And then you start making amends. And then you start, you have to forgive yourself in this too. Yeah. Because there's some things that you admit about yourself and you're like, can I forgive myself for that?
Yeah.
So that's hard. And I think it's incredible.
Forgiveness is multidimensional, and it's something that as your awareness and your consciousness grows, so do you have to then go back and forgive other things, because you'll start to make other pattern connections and you'll start to see other things. And, forgiveness is it's one of the most important instruments to healing. But like you said, forgiving yourself, that's a lot of the work. Forgiving others. And as you start to elevate, you start to realize that you played more of a role than you thought you did, and the actions that, that happened all around you. And, but forgiveness is one of the most important aspects. That's one of the things that I teach. I have some people that I mentor and I teach them, and they've been severely traumatized. And it's, in some cases they've been traumatized in ways that, I don't even want to describe, but we teach them how to find forgiveness through compassion and through their connection to their higher power. And when you really find forgiveness that way, and on the other side of forgiveness is really repentance. It's really coming from a place of like, I'm not going to do this again. I'm sorry. And making amends. And whether you're making amends with the person you perpetrated on, or you're making amends with God, it's making that amends in a way that, that you lay it all on the table. And when you do that, you start the process of transformation. And over a period of time, your awareness will change. And pretty soon you'll look back at the events that pained you, like to look at, you're like, I did that. I was that person. And you'll smile and you'll be completely integrated and whole. And you'll say, yeah, I was a complete jerk back then, and you'll have confidence in knowing you're not that person now. And it takes time, for those people that are going through the transformation, I always remind them healing is painful. But the pain of not healing is far worse than the pain of healing. So you might as well embrace the pain of healing and really just try to seek it out as much as you can and do it as fast as you possibly can, because the pain of not healing, it manifests in so many different ways, and it plagues you in many more ways than one.
I want your opinion on something. I'm going to go way off, kind of go to the side.
Let's go. I'm in.
Okay. So, as humans, we're supposed to feel. That is what's in. We weren't given feelings for nothing. We're supposed to cry. We're supposed to be happy. We're supposed to be sad. We're supposed to have fear. We're supposed to experience shame, but we can't live in shame. There's a difference. We do experience all the things. That's what we're here for. So when you see, and I read a book that was so incredible to me, but it was something that made me aware of what happens in our society. And I know you see it. The propaganda of numbing is everywhere. Like, I read Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Mm-hmm. So it's my number one book still, because it changed my perspective and my perception on everything. I'm like, oh, there it is. So it really brought me to a different place. And I started to see all the things, like everywhere you go, alcohol, even drugs, it's glamorized. Yeah. Now it's getting so mainstream that it's like, oh my gosh, wine nights. And when you look at this, you're like, we're joking about women and men drinking bottles and bottles of wine. And then the weed, you're in California, so you get it. Weed, and that's everywhere now. But California is like, that, and very progressive and out there. And so it's like, when you see how society is pushing people to not heal, how do you feel about that? And with Altar Call, what are you doing to bring awareness to this type of behavior and show people a different way?
Yeah, well, the good news is they're creating a lot of customers for me. There's massive engines pushing people toward addiction and self-medication. And all of those things are then pushing people toward finding ways to, become whole and not have to distract yourself from your reality. As you said, when you become healed, you no longer have to distract yourself from reality. You're happy with the reality that you're in. And if you want to shift your state of consciousness, do it fast, you can do it breath, you can do it going on a backpacking trip or taking a trip out to the desert. There's many different ways that you can shift your state of consciousness that bring in so much more revelation and so much more light than the short-term things like alcohol and marijuana and so forth, which, believe me, I tried and experimented with those two substances enough times to tell you it doesn't bring long-term light. It might bring some short-term light, but it will definitely sacrifice long-term light. And then back to your question of like, what am I doing? Well, one is leading by example. And so by showing people, and speaking truthfully about my own challenges with substance abuse and my own challenges with escapism, speaking truthfully about that and sharing that with people. And then I'm actually doing something about it, and that our programs teach people how to restrict anything and everything that is stopping them from receiving their next level of light. So many people are addicted to so many different things. Some people it's coffee, other people it's a prescription medication, other people it's social media. And so any addiction that we have, anything that addicts us, we have to get control over that in order for us to get to our highest level of self-mastery. And so anytime we want to make a shift, we have to actually shift something out of our life to make the space to add things into our life. And so I teach people every single day. I have a mastermind that, I teach a number of very successful entrepreneurs exactly how to, to take the steps in their journey of self-mastery. And that's really Altar Call's purpose. Is the word alter, is to alter, so to change. And call is obviously call. So it's to alter the things in your life so that you may answer your calling. And it's a call to change. And that's where the word was derived from. So the entire essence of our name and who we are is to help people make that shift away from what society is teaching us is the way that we should be living and conducting ourselves, and into a way where we're more spiritually aligned and we're healthier and we're living a happier, more fulfilled life.
Absolutely. I love it. And we're going to get some links too. We're going to shoot some links for everybody to see on here before the end of the show, and it'll be played for everybody. So if they want to join your mastermind, heck yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really successful people that are looking for someone like you to help them, get through these things. I always say it's the one thing. I've spoke a lot at events, and I'm like, what's your one thing? And you nailed it. It doesn't have, I think a lot of people think it has to be drugs or alcohol. And that's the thing. No. Do you procrastinate? Or do you scroll on social media? Are you obsessed with your looks?
Yeah.
Do you do it? Is that everything to you? Is it sex? Is it, what is your thing? Because we all have something that's holding us back. And, it could be as simple as that. We don't have to get super deep on it all the time, but it's like, you have to identify it first. And some people just, the accountability or the even acknowledging it's there, that's the first step. Like, identify that and you can start healing. But until they can see what that is, it's really challenging. The other big thing I'm seeing right now, and it's been going on for years, but the devil worshiping and this movement in celebrities and all these people, I'm like, they're saying it out loud now. They're just like wearing it. It's like, we always knew that they were into it, but it's really interesting. I mean, we've got, my kids listen, or they want to listen to like this, like Little Nas or whoever this guy who shows up on Saturday at 5, the ratings dropped. Listen, the world still doesn't want it. It's still not working. Like, even if you slap it on a celebrity, it's very interesting what's going on with society again in that way. Not only propaganda, but just saying it right there. Like, they're putting it right out for everyone to see, and everyone's just like, wow, And I think it also pushes people again towards you. Like,
well, there's a war between the dark and the light.
Oh, big time.
And the dark has got, their people, as you mentioned, some celebrities coming out saying that this is their, their deity, and the light has got their people. And, I'm one of those people, you're one of those people. And there's a number of other people that are making the choice to actually spread the light. And there's a war out there. It's a cultural war. And, right now it feels in many cases like the dark is winning. And so that's why, God has called upon many of us to actually spread light and equipped many of us with, and I feel like my entire transformational journey has just been an equipping session. Like, I've been taught and trained every step of the way. And I see it, my team as well, that is now part of Altar Call, and the people that are part of the movement, I see them being equipped. And so I know that there's a massive preparation happening, and there's a massive war occurring, the dark versus the light. And my job is to try to, attract as many people as I possibly can that want to be a part of the light, and that want to be a model and be an example and live a life in pursuit of self-mastery, and a life where we're transformed into being molded after God's very own heart. And that's a big thing to do, to step up and say, like, I'm willing to change anything and everything about me that does not serve my purpose and does not enable me to answer my calling. And that's the mission I've signed up for. And that's the mission that my team has signed up for. And, and many of the people that are part of our movement on many different levels of that journey. But that's my life's mission and my life's work.
I love it. And we're so grateful to have you on today. And before we go, what's next for Ryan? What's next for Altar Call? What would you love to share with the audience today? And how to find you. Where to find you.
Perfect. Well, there's a couple of ways to find me. You can go to @RealRyanBlair on Instagram, and we have a Spiritual Warrior Challenge. It's free that we're doing. We have a free principles course that you can opt into, and we have a free meditation and prayer that we do every single day. And right now we're having about 300 people join us in our daily prayer and meditation every single day, 7 days a week. And my guess is, within the next couple of years, that'll be 3,000 or 30,000. Who knows how many people. And my goal is to continue to expand my impact and to scale my impact, teaching the methods, modalities, and principles and practices that, that I was so blessed to learn. I was called to learn each of these during that 2-year period. And after learning them and mastering them, now I'm called to teach them. And that's really the essence of the altar call movement and really my life's work.
And I love it. And I do see, I see that every day. I pop on and I'm like, there it is. And I always like everything. I mean, you are definitely inspiring me. And it's been a pleasure having you on. And we are going to blast out all your links, and we will be playing this soon. But you know what, Ryan, thank you so much for answering my message on Instagram. I thought that was fun. I'm like, I'm going to reach out and just see if he answers. And you did, which was
thank you.
So cool.
It was a God thing. When I saw that pop up, I knew right away that, that I had to do this session. So Shylo, it's a pleasure to get reacquainted with you. And I know that we'll be talking in the future here.
I'm Shylo Ekstrom, and you just heard from Ryan Blair, and we will catch you on the next episode.